right, so just a little bit of extra background as you're here today. So I am Jaleesa Davis, CNP Program Coordinator here at the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance. As I mentioned on the screen, you will see our webinar housekeeping video, just giving you insights on how you can make the most of today's session. You're welcome to have your camera on. Your mic will be disabled for now, but you are more than welcome to have your camera on so that we can see your face, and you can see the face of all the other participants that are here. So just getting right in. So today's session is brought to you by the Association of CNPs, the professional organization of certified nonprofit professionals. And so one way that our association likes to support its members is by hosting sessions on topics like these and any other things that may be on your mind as a professional in the nonprofit space. So fun fact, these events are always free. If you would like to continue to support the free webinars, check the chat. We'll drop a link for ways to donate so that these events can continue to stay free. And today, our speaker is going to be Adrian Jamieson, and we'll be talking about the first 90 days engineering momentum in a new leadership role. So today she'll share insights about mechanics of leading through transition. And then before we dive in today, I definitely want to share a little bit more just about her so you can get a little tidbit. So Adrian is a champion for operational excellence. She has over a decade of experience, and she specializes in program development, community engagement, and strategic organizational growth. So without further delay, I would like to bring Adrian to the stage.
Thank you, Jaleesa. I so appreciate it. And thank you to the association for hosting today. We're going to start off with this really professional behind the scenes view as I share my screen and you all watch me pull up my presentation. So give me just a second here. I want to make sure that we can see everything really well. So. All right, how does that look? Thumbs up. Awesome. Okay, so just a little bit about me before we kick off. I usually present in person, and so I very much like to talk to folks as I'm presenting, get your feedback, and host a conversation. So please continue to be active in the chat. Let me know if you're starting a new leadership role, announce it to everyone here so we can all congratulate you. Or if you're thinking about making a transition, let us know so maybe we can provide you with some support. I'm here to share a little bit about engineering momentum during leadership transitions, especially those first critical 90 days. Just to give you a little background about what you can expect today, we're going to talk about the dynamics of change. Why is it so hard to make change in an agency? Why does it feel so difficult for folks personally and also for organizations? We're going to talk about finding a voice for your leadership. And then we're really going to dig into those first 90 days and how to make the most of those. Before we close out, I'll be taking your questions. I have some resources to share and a little survey at the end. So my organization, I'm the executive director and CEO at Community Action of Southern Indiana. If we have any other community action agencies, let me know. But we're the poverty fighting organization for our community. I have been in my role for just over 2 years, and I was new to the organization when I stepped into this position. The previous executive director had been in his role for 10 years and had been with the agency for 30. So it was a significant organizational change when I came in. We're a pretty moderate size nonprofit organization. We have a number of programs related to early childhood education, health and wellness, housing, basic needs, and financial literacy. And we have 80 staff members doing everything from teaching kids every day to running technical energy analysis on homes to operating a food pantry. So really, this incredibly diverse team that I get to support. So that's a little bit about my perspective on how change has been for me. All right, so this is going to be your first opportunity to give some feedback in the chat. And this might feel a little out of the box, but I would love to hear how folks wash the dishes. And I'll tell you why I care here in just a minute. Are you someone who washes them by hands? Do you fill the sink all the way? Do you have a tub that you put in the sink? Or are you someone who puts it straight in the dishwasher without rinsing? How are we feeling? Jaleesa, I can't actually see the chat like I thought I would be able to. So will you call out a few? What are folks saying? How are we washing dishes?
Absolutely. So we have by hand, we have human dishwasher. Dishwashers are preferred. We have rinse, then dishwasher. A lot of dishwashers so far. Some people are just, hey, let's let them soak.
Let's let them soak, right? If I just put it in the sink, eventually something will happen strategy. Now, I don't know about your all's households, but this is a strong emotional topic in my house. I have a very specific way. I don't pre-rinse my dishes. I believe the dishwasher should do all of my work, but I do want it loaded in a very particular way. And when my sisters come over and we share a Sunday dinner, they're not allowed to wash the dishes because they do it wrong. And I'm not allowed to wash the dishes at their house either. So this is just a really tiny example of how we can feel strongly about the way we do something. So I want you to imagine for just a moment that someone comes in, and if you are a dishwasher person, they take your dishwasher out and they say, oh, sorry, you need to do all your dishes by hand from now on. And I know the big emoji. And someone who is a dedicated tub washer is told, no, it's quicker if you just put it in the dishwasher. We're going to install one for you. For a lot of us, we would immediately go, oh, mind your own business. It's my dishes. Why do you care how I do it? My way is the best way, and I can give you a 10-minute rant about why that is true. But this is one way, and we'll kind of revisit this example as we go, that we can think about reactions to change. When you're used to doing something one way, why does it feel so difficult when we're asked to do something else? So this is kind of a visual chart of how folks react to change. So in our top right-hand quadrant, we have our folks who, when they hear they're being asked to change the way they do their dishes, they're like, oh, that sounds like a really great idea. Tell me how we're going to do it and how I can help you, right? So these people are really invested and they're accepting of the change. Then you have the folks who are not oppositional to the change in any way, but they don't really care. They don't do the dishes at their house. They couldn't care less if we're loading it top to bottom or bottom to top. This is not important to them. Once we move down to our left side, we have our folks who are more resistant. So we have someone who's highly invested. This is the person who can tell you exactly why they load the dishwasher the way they do. They've read the science. They know that the soap is going to cling to the mildew on the dishes. And they do not believe that change is necessary. They're going to actively push back against that change. And then lastly, in our bottom left-hand quadrant, we have those folks who are apathetic. They both don't care and they don't like the idea of change at all. So this can sound like when you're presenting change. So you can see over here, starting in our top right again, I'm excited to see how this is going to improve things. It will be fine. This doesn't really affect me. Then you have those resistant folks. I cannot get on board with this, and they will tell you why. Or you have your resistant apathetic. What's the point? Why are we trying to make change? And so having a label and an understanding for the type of reactions that you are likely to receive can help you in preparing for how to get changed. And the one I want to call out to you as being most important for you to think about, a lot of people get most emotionally charged by those people who are invested and resistant. So the people who are actively saying no against something that you're proposing. But I would argue that it's the apathetic group that we really need to be concerned about. If you have someone who's both resistant and invested, that means that they're paying attention, that they are doing their research, that they do care about this issue. And if you are able to come with reasoning or information that can change their mind, that's going to be a lot easier than explaining to someone who's apathetic why they should care at all. So we're going to keep a strong eye on that apathetic, resistant person and see if we can't move them closer to the center. So types of change in the workplace. The first we're going to dig into is systems change. So this is going to change how things are done. So some examples of this might be new technology, a new standard operating process, or new policies. We are implementing a new system. Then we have people change. We are going to change who does things. So maybe we've hired a new staff member, or we've reorganized the org chart. We're assigning new responsibilities, taking some responsibilities from one team and giving them to another. Or maybe we're even farming things out to external roles. So if you've made a transition from having a third-party marketing team and you decide to bring that in-house, or you've had an in-house fund development staff member and you decide to hire an external grant writer, that's going to be a pretty significant people change for your team to adapt to. And then lastly, we have culture change, which is the why we do things. So if your organization is embracing a new emphasis on equity, that's going to change a lot in your agency. And at first, it might not seem as concrete as systems change or people's change. It's harder to point at, but it is going to have a more significant change overall in the agency. How to change resource allocation. So if you have had a really long-standing program that you have just poured resources into, but it's no longer effective and you need to reallocate those resources somewhere else, it's going to be a really difficult culture change for the organization and associated staff to move through. And then, of course, if you revise your mission statement, when you're updating your strategic plan, those culture changes can be a little bit easier to facilitate because there's a roadmap for how they should be done. But there can be a lot of emotion, a lot of challenges and pushback to those as well. And when we talk about embracing new leaders or transitioning to a new leadership role, we're really looking at an intersection of all of these types of change, right? So when you bring in a new leader, they are not only a new person to the team, whether they've been promoted from within or brought out as an external candidate, but they're also likely to make some cultural and system changes. And so we have to keep an eye on that from a fatigue perspective to make sure we are not asking too much of our teams at one time and really acknowledge how challenging it can be when you feel like you're being asked to change in so many different ways at one time. So why is change so hard? The number one reason, my perspective, is the law of inertia, right? So an object at rest will stay at rest, an object in motion will stay in motion. It is so much easier for you to keep doing what you've been doing and just complain about it than it is to actually make a change, right? So I think we can all point to something in our own lives where we say, we know this is not working out the best for us. If it's how often you exercise, how much you sleep, how you manage your work time, where you know there's probably a better way to do it, but it's really hard to do something different. And so I'd really rather just complain about it for now. And that's okay, except for when we're really pushed to make change for whatever reason. The second reason is that the future is unclear, especially right now. Tomorrow is unclear right now. We don't know if our program is being funded. We don't know what illegal DEI means. We don't know. We just don't know. And as leaders, we don't want to be wrong. When we are kind of going out on a limb and saying that we want to make a change, we are asking people to believe that we are that we can see the future, that there's some information that we have that is allowing us to predict. And in some cases, we do have a little bit more information than other team members about what's on the horizon. So in my seat, we have a national association. I collect all that information. I know where to look for updates on our funding. I can look at local trends and talk to other leaders. And so I do have a stronger idea of what the future will hold, but I don't know for certain. I am not the person who decides whether federal awards continue or whether Congress passes their budget or whatever it may be. So I have to be comfortable with the information I do have available to me in laying out a plan for my team. And all these questions come up. So what if the change I'm making actually isn't better than what already exists? What if people don't like it? What if I was wrong? What if the funding changes? All of those things are questions that we ask as leaders looking to make change that can hold us back from really facilitating that well. So a few strategies to help overcome these challenges. The first is, of course, we hear it all the time, to get input so that we can build buy-in. This is not a new concept for anyone, but it is critical when you are looking to implement change. And I'll kind of show you what this looks like in action. But there are lots of ways to get input, and you will need to figure out what that looks like in your agency. So employee surveys are always an option. If you have a really large, diverse team, this can be useful. I've also found that a lot of staff are kind of suspicious of surveys. No matter how many times you tell them that it's anonymous, there are a few people who will just not believe you. Also, getting people to take the 5 minutes to do the survey can be hard. So can you offer a gift card incentive for anyone who participates? What can you do? Can you do a paper survey to get it in front of them when they're all together? All those kinds of things to make sure that you're getting the data that you need for smart decision making. You can look at your program data and performance reviews. Also having one-on-one meetings. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Your focus groups and your work groups. So when you're looking for to build buy-in, checking in with those content experts, the person who operates the program, the person that's impacted by the program, the person who's previously worked in that program, what can those content experts tell you that you can then use to build buy-in for the change? And then using cross-departmental teams. So maybe you know that one team is going to be really resistant to a change. Having another part of the organization come in and share their perspective of how this change has already impacted them might be a way to move people away from that. And the important part of this is that you're connecting what you hear in these conversations to the goals that you're presenting. So this says, in our recent employee survey, 83% of staff shared that they felt an improved client data system would be helpful. Who doesn't want an improved client data system? And a deeper look at our current platform with the data team shows that we have room for improvement in how we report out the number of clients served. That is why we are investing in this vital new data system, right? So every time a program hears that we are rolling out a new data system, new data tracking, new technology, there is just this cringe, right? Oh, something new to learn. I just learned how to use the last one. Why are we doing this? And that's when you really need to put it back into the hands of the people that you spoke with. So in this example, we're saying in our employee survey, 83% of you shared that you felt that this is something we needed to make change against. 83%. You said that this is a change we needed to make. I didn't decide this. You said this. And then we later said we met with our data team. So we talked to our experts. Our experts have endorsed this system. And we tie all of that into the why. So why are we making this change? Not just to make your life more difficult. We are making this change because you said there needed to be a change. Our experts agreed, and this is their recommendation for how we should roll it out. And when you package your change in that format, it becomes a lot harder to push back against, to get that resistance against. The other thing you want to look for is to revisit your chart here of those reactions to change. And you know the people that you're going to need to work on, right? So we're specifically paying attention to those who are in our resistant and invested. But if you are using language like this, you're going to already be a long way into getting them invested into their change. The people that we really need to work on are those resistant and apathetic folks. So they are not open to change. But who I want you to find is this person up here, the person who is invested and accepting. They are excited about change. They are paying attention. They understand the necessity, and they're willing to become your champion. So as much as I want every idea that comes out of my mouth for my staff to think that is the coolest, greatest idea they've ever heard, that's just not reality. But when they hear it from others, they might be willing to be more bought in. So your champions can come from a lot of different places. So your champion might be your content expert. So this might be your data person who's saying, yes, we absolutely need to do this. It could be other leaders in the organization. So if you have a middle manager or just someone who has been with the organization for a long time and has built a lot of respect among their peers, they might be your champion. And then there are your culture carriers. So these are just the people that everyone sees, knows, and values in your organization. So these are your informal leaders. I'm labeling them as champions because you want them to help you advocate for your change. And so we're going to give them that crown. We're going to tell them how much their input and voice matters, and we're going to let them do some of the heavy lifting on our behalf. So in practice, this might look like saying you're going to do a pilot group before. So if you're launching a new data system and before you roll it out to the entire team, you let them know that, this change is coming, but we have a pilot group who's going to test it out. And you're going to make sure that your pilot group includes some of these people on it. So your experts and your culture carriers, so that when you get to the end of the pilot, you have people ready to advocate for this amazing change on your behalf. You don't have to do as much heavy lifting. All right, so some unique challenges specific to leadership transitions, which I think is what a lot of folks are interested in hearing today. Jaleesa and I were just kind of reflecting on the timeliness of this topic because the last several years have been so difficult for those in leadership that many folks who have been in the sector for a very long time are choosing to roll out of their positions. They're feeling burnt out, they're ready to retire or move to another sector. And so there's a lot of leadership transition going on in the sector right now. So what are kind of those unique challenges from the leader's perspective, but also from the team as they welcome in a new leader? So for the leader, a couple of things for you to keep in mind. One, new leaders don't always have the context for early decision making. We're going to dive into that a little bit more, but someone comes to you on the first day and they say, I need this, I need this, I need this. But you in your new position are not going to know what the conversation has been like before you got there very often. And so why is this decision so critical right now? Another concern with new leaders is being overly concerned with being friendly and being liked. So if you are being promoted from a team that you were previously on and now you are managing that team, what does that look like if you're now managing the people who were your peers, who were your friends? That can be a really difficult power dynamic that you're going to need to address. And it is easier to say, oh, hey, bud, everything's going to be the way it was before. But that might not be reality. And if you're coming in brand new to an organization, people don't know much about you. They may not know your kind of reputation in town. You are worried about whether your team is going to like and respect you. And new leaders are very often eager to make change, right? Like if you are in leadership, it is in your nature to seek change. On the other side of that, in our yellow box, the team might be feeling a lot of change fatigue. So you could be the third person in this role in the last year. And the idea of you coming in saying, oh, I'm so excited to be here. Here's all the changes I can't wait for us to make, just makes the team feel sick to their stomach, right? They can't imagine being bought into something when they have already been asked to do so much. Realistically, they may miss their previous leader. If it was someone who is well respected and well liked, who had been in their position for a long time, they might miss the previous leadership. Or even if the previous leader was one of those people who was overly concerned with being friendly and liked, and you are not, that's going to be a dynamic change for you and for them. We've all heard it. This is how we've always done it. That is a big one, especially for our apathetic folks, our resistant folks. We don't need to change it. We've always done it this way, and it's fine. And cultural alignment. So if you are coming into an agency like I did, where the previous executive director had been there for a really long time, the way that I lead, the way that I choose to approach our work is quite a bit different than he did. And we've had to do some cultural adjustments. They've had to get used to me, and I've gotten used to them. And we now have a new kind of agency culture that's a mix of our leadership team, our community, and all of our staff. So all of those things coming into play can make these leadership transitions a little bit more difficult. So one of your first challenges and opportunities is going to be on working on finding your voice for your leadership, right? So this is one of those places where we all dreamed about, can we just start over? I'll go to a new school and I'll make up whatever personality I wish I had. I'll be outgoing, I'll do all my homework. This is all of our best intentions coming to a new role, right? But realistically, we want to think about how we are coming across as a leader. And this is a fresh opportunity to design your voice to be what you want it to be. And no one is going to sit in one of these boxes all the time. People move through depending on where they are in their leadership journey. This is very much a spectrum, a fluid spectrum. But in our left-hand side, we have those who are overly concerned with being liked. So they're going to avoid making decisions or tough calls. They're going to be indirect. They're going to want to kind of pass it off, pass the buck if they can, and be indecisive. So they're not going to want to make a lot of changes. As opposed to our authoritative leadership, who is really working to say, I'm in charge here, and that's just the way it's going to be. So they're defensive, maybe passive aggressive, yelling. And that's a way to show that you are in charge for sure. And there might be a place for some of that, never yelling. But it's not the way that when we're all being our best selves, we really want to lead. Most folks are really shooting for a confident leadership position, an assertive leadership position where they can speak directly to their team, where they can be open, where they can be calm, and they can make decisions confidently. And it is really difficult to do that when you have all of these things at play. So how do we do that? How do we become the leaders that we want to be when real life is happening? So how do we do that in the first 90 days as a new leader? And if you haven't already told us about your new leadership role or the leadership role that you are trying to take on, please do that in the chat. I would love to go back and see what everyone is thinking about. But whether this is your first leadership position or your 10th executive directorship, whatever it is, the first 90 days is a really unique opportunity to set yourself up for success. And so some of my comments are going to be specific to kind of an agency executive leader, but you can absolutely be customized for whatever phase of leadership that you're in. But I cheated, and the work of starting in a new leadership position doesn't start on day one through 90. It very often starts before that, especially if you're already a part of the agency. But some things for you to think about, getting your hands on and getting to dig through before you are starting that official 90-day period. So I want you to do your homework. If you are coming into the organization for the first time, you're moving from a singular department to a more agency-wide perspective, I want you to be looking at these things. Take a look at the org chart. When was it last updated? Does it make sense? Look at the most recent audit in 990, where there findings. What is your board member? Are there any board members or officers that are compensated that you need to be aware of? Are there any findings in the audit that you wouldn't have previously paid attention to in your other role? Are they behind on their audits? These are things you want to know. Your strategic plan, maybe if you were just singularly focused on a specific department before, maybe you haven't spent a lot of time digging into the organization's strategic plan. But now that you have this higher level view, you want to understand what are the organization's priorities. And when was that plan created? Is it being used regularly, or is it a document that sits on the shelf? And when will your next strategic plan be due? Is that something you're going to tackle right away as a new leader, or is that something that they put into place right before you came on and maybe doesn't need to be revisited for a couple of years? Especially if you're sitting in an executive role, you're going to want to get to know your board roster really well and start thinking about how you want to engage those folks. How long have they been on the board? How are they recruited? And then taking a look at the organization's social channels. So this is a really easy way to evaluate how organizations are thinking about themselves. What news information do they think is important enough to put out into the community? And are people engaging with that content back? Is there someone who comments on every single post? Great, that's probably someone that you're going to want to get to know. Have they not updated their Facebook since 2009? That's also something you might want to know. So these are all ways that you can kind of get a feel for the agency before you've even started. Days 1 through 30, you want to meet with as many people one-on-one as possible. And depending on the size of your organization, this could be hugely burdensome. My agency had 70 staff members. I think I was able to meet with about 40 of them in the first 30 days, and it was time absolutely well spent. And during this time, you and they are going to want to dive into the program work or the department work, and they're going to want to say, here's how things work. Here's here's this admin plan that you need to read, and all of that stuff is great and it's important. But in these first discussions, I want you to really stay focused on the people themselves, because that is going to move them out of that place of transition fear and change fatigue that they've had. Because right now the change is so centered on your leadership. And what we really want to hear is how they've been holding consistent through this time. So what brought you to the organization? How long have you been here? What are your favorite days to come into work? Are there special event days? Are there days that you work with clients? Is it audit week? What is your favorite time to be here? How do you hope the organization grows? What is your vision? And you will learn some really interesting things. Folks will tell you about programs that the organization used to have, or programs that they see that other organizations have, or you'll find out that no one knows everything that the organization does. And that'll be an opportunity for you as well. The only kind of program work specific thing outside of just getting to know those people that I want you to ask about is there anything you're worried about falling through the cracks in the next 90 days while I get up to speed? This is a great way to build trust with your team early on. So you are saying, I am new. I don't know everything about your work. I know that you might be worried about this change, this transition in leadership. Is there anything that you're worried about in this next 90 days while I get up to speed that you want to make sure doesn't fall off? People will so appreciate when you ask this question, because they can hand off that thing that they are worried about and make sure that it doesn't get lost. And there are a few things in there that really will not be too terribly urgent, but there are a few things if you have an audit going on, if you have a monitoring review going on, if you have a big event going on, that you will want to pick up on those things right away. And this is the way to pick those up without just drinking from a fire hose of reading everything that you can read. So during these one-on-ones, in addition to just getting to know the members of your team, we're also looking for two things in particular. One, we're looking to identify early on who some of the culture carriers are in the organization already. So if you hear a name coming up over and over again, what brought you to the organization? Well, Kevin recruited me, Kevin recruited me, Kevin recruited, or I used to work under this person, but I don't work under that person anymore, but we still meet for coffee every day. Those are the folks that you want to build to get over on your team as early as possible. The other thing that you're looking for is common pain points. So if you are hearing things come up repeatedly, we have this meeting every single week that drags on. I can't stand coming in on Wednesdays because of this, because of that. Those are things you want to make note of, because those are things that you could potentially address in your first 90 days and create a big impact on the organization during that time. I also want you to sit down and have an honest conversation with human resources during this time. And these questions are really specific to an executive level role. You can still have this conversation if you are just transitioning to a team manager or department manager, but some of your questions might be a little bit different. So, number one, what are people most worried about? What are people most worried about? That they're not going to tell me, right? Because they're still trying to make a good impression on me as their new agency leader. What are they telling you? What were they worried about before I got here? If you were coming into an executive role, you might want to know if there were other internal candidates who were considered for your role. And the idea is that those people are going to have something to offer the agency. If they were applying for the same role that you applied for, then you have the opportunity to really lean on their expertise and amplify them and allow them to become one of your culture carriers. So rather than seeing them as a point of competition or contention, we want to say, listen, you were clearly very qualified. I need you on my team to be successful here. That's one of those comments that's really specific to executive level. It might not be appropriate if you're at other levels. They can't share hiring information with you, but it is good for you to know from HR what kind of the dynamic behind your hiring was. And then what steps were taken to support the transition before I got here? This one's unique to if you're coming to the agency for the first time. When I asked this question, the answer was nothing. They had no idea who I was, what my experience or my background was. They hadn't announced it to any partners or any of our concrete grant funders. And so I knew those were things I needed to do. I knew that I was feeling mysterious to the staff who were welcoming me, and that I needed to do a little education about my background as well to help folks feel more comfortable. All right, so that's how you're going to spend your first 30 days. The next 30 days, now is when you're going to dive into your programs, into the operations and management of whatever your scope is. But the key here is that I want you to take leadership over your own learning. So program staff and frontline staff are often asked to be the trainers of their managers. And that's not really a fair burden because they are doing the work. So instead, I want you to ask them, what can I look at ahead of time to make sure that we are making the best use of our time together? Is there an admin plan that I can read on my own and then bring you questions? Do you have marketing materials you'd like me to review? Do you have the recap from last year so that I can get up to speed? And rather than coming to your meetings with them, waiting for them just to download information to you, you will already have a basic contextual knowledge of what you're talking about and can ask more specific, more thoughtful questions rather than just, again, drinking from that water hose. During this time, you want to be really aware of team bandwidth. So yes, this is the time that you're coming in, but if it is also the time when a team is being audited or being monitored, maybe don't meet with them right away. Let that monitoring, let that audit wrap up before you really start diving in, because they are already at capacity, and you coming in and asking questions is not going to get you off on the right foot. Are there any team scheduling norms I should be aware of? So your posted agency hours, ours are 8:30 to 4:30, but we have folks who work all around that based on their program needs. And so I don't want to schedule a meeting for someone at 4:30 if their day really ends at 2 because they have to go pick up their kid from school. Right. So I want to be really mindful of not becoming my learning becoming a burden on others. And then another way to just continue to build that trust is acknowledging your newness. So so you need to tell them you are the expert. What do you think is most important for me to know? The higher up you move in leadership, the less of an expert you will be in any given department or program or operations. And there's no way that you can ever grow to be an expert. If you are, you're kind of going backwards, right? We want you to grow up. We want you to have a broader perspective. We want you to be very good at a lot of things. We want you to be thinking strategically. We do not want you to be the expert in day-to-day program operations in most cases. And so by acknowledging that, you are giving them permission to continue to do what they're already doing really well and highlight for you what they think is most important for you to know. And this is going to help unlock trust with your team. All right. And in the last 30 days, we're going to put it all together and we're going to try to win some things early on, right? Because we want our team to know that we are not only having these meetings and working through this content, but we're actually going to do something with it, that we're in it for the long haul. So we're going to want to pay attention to who are the culture carriers, who did we find, what pain points did we discover in our one-on-ones, and what action could we take based on that information to demonstrate the tone of our leadership style. So this is where we get to show right away, are we going to be assertive? Are we going to be cautious? Are we going to be tyrannical? What is the tone of our leadership going to be like? And I'm going to share some of the ones that I did in my first 90 days based on this information. So who are the culture carriers? We have an agency staff member who has been with us for over 40 years. She is amazing. She has worked in lots of different program areas. She is highly trusted in the community, and she's really well informed. She's been there over 40 years. But she wasn't being invited to participate in our leadership team meetings. And she was titled as a manager. All other managers were invited to participate, but she wasn't. And so I talked to her a little bit about, well, a lot of it, about her role, about her growth in the organization, about her goals. I talked to HR about why she wasn't being included in those meetings. I talked to some other leaders about the dynamic of that leadership team meetings. And I decided really early on that she needed to be at those meetings. She was a manager. She was managing a department. She had lots of experience, and she'd never been provided the opportunity to develop her leadership voice. It was a failure of previous leadership. It was not a reflection of her, what she could bring to the table. And so I made an effort to purposely reach out for her input on several early decisions and bring her to that leadership table as a way to say that I honor the history and the culture of this organization and honor the expertise of this individual in particular. So in those one-on-ones, I also took a look at the pain points. There were several. One was that the management team was meeting every single week for like 2 hours at a time. I sat through one of those meetings and heard in the meetings themselves how miserable people were. And I said, we'll figure something else out. We're not doing these anymore. Tell me what you want. We'll work on it. But another one that I heard was that the agency had a really generous time off policy. We had quite a few people who had big banks of vacation time, but they were still feeling really burnt out. So if you think of a program like Head Start, where you have students coming in every single day that you need to take care of, plus all the administrative back work, it can feel really difficult to take time away, even when you have it. And they also felt like even when they were away, they couldn't unplug, because the team dynamic was that you could still call your team members if they were on vacation, or if they were away, you could just call them or text them, or maybe they check their email. And so even when one team member would take their vacation, they would still get these calls. So they were never truly unplugging from the mental burden of doing this work. And so I introduced a week-long office closure in the summer, and no one works during that time. The office is closed. It does not account against their vacation time. They don't have to, we didn't reduce their vacation time. It doesn't take away from their vacation time. They don't have to apply their vacation time. And no one works. And during that week, no one bothers anyone else. We don't host events at our facilities. The facilities are closed. There's no crisis. There's no emergencies. There's no programs. And this was a big culture change, because to pause for a whole week felt just super heavy. But this has been one of those areas where folks have given just tremendous amounts of feedback on. And I wanted them to know that I hear their challenges. I understand where they're coming from, and that we're willing to try new things to address these. Now, this last decision I made is probably the most controversial, but it is one that often comes up in leadership, so I felt it was important to include. A key staff member was making everyone else miserable. They were mean. They would hoard information. They wouldn't take into consideration other people's workload and setting deadlines. They would say that things were needed now. They were rude. And when they made mistakes, which was frequently, they would throw other team members under the bus. And this came up in the most cautious ways in almost every single one of my one-on-ones. They would kind of list it as a department, or say, here's one of my challenges. And they weren't throwing this particular person. But when you dug a little deeper, and as I was watching, it was this particular person. And so a few months into my new role, I terminated that staff member. They weren't helping to build the culture that we needed at the organization. And they weren't being effective in their role as a team member. And as part of that, I brought everyone together after them and let them know, like, this person is no longer a part of the team. Here's what we're going to do during the vacancy. I'm going to make myself available to kind of take over their responsibilities during this time block. Here's what you can expect. And then I got a lot of input during the hiring process for the new candidate. So I consulted the team members' direct reports. I let them look at their resumes. I talked to them after every interview. I had other people sit on the interview process. And this has been the most important hire of my career, because this is one of those where I really didn't know what the future was going to hold, right? With the magic 8-ball, is this going to work out? Is this the right thing? Will people like it? Will they not like it? Like, really a brutal decision. But it is one of the best decisions that I've made. And all of these things kind of came about in those first 90 days. And the intent was to really be clear early on about what I wanted my team and the organization to know about me, and to understand my leadership voice. So my hope is that my leadership voice comes across in this way. I value the experts on my team, and I respect the history of the organization. I care about my team as a whole person, as whole people, and want them to live complete lives outside of work, so that you decide to continue to come to work, that you have more to give. And I'm willing to make hard decisions for the good of the organization. Teamwork is a core value of the work that we do. Being kind to one another is a core value of what we do. And I'm willing to make difficult decisions to facilitate that. And I see we're coming up on time. I saw your face. I'm going to zoom through. I think I have one more. This is a quick do's and don'ts of the first 90 days. 1, do set boundaries early. It is only going to get harder. Don't put your cell phone on your business card or in your signature line. People don't need to reach you. It's just not that big. Do focus on building trust or being liked, and do invest in your own self-care. So Plan to be away at that 90-day mark. That is a very reasonable amount of time before you take a day off. Please do that. Find your peers, make sure you have some of that emotional support that you're going to need in your role, and invest in a quality therapist. I have one that specializes in supporting individuals in public service work, and it makes a huge difference to the way I'm able to lead because I don't have to put that kind of emotional burden on other folks around me. And don't let others trap you into decisions too early on. So when someone brings you something that you don't have the context to make a good decision on, ask them, what is their timeline on this? Say, I'd like to give it some more thought or do some research, and also get the context for how that decision making was made in the past. I do have some suggested readings for folks, and I know this slide deck is being shared. These are fantastic. I revisit them regularly, depending on what's going on at the agency or what I'm working on. So please feel free to look through that. And then a personal ask, if you'll consider providing me with some feedback on this presentation, I would greatly appreciate it. It helps me build out future sessions. So with that, I'm going to leave that up, but if there are questions from the team, be happy to take those.
All right. Thank you so much, Adrian. That was really, really great. I hope you're seeing all of the applauses and hearts that are popping up on the screen. This was really, really great. And we do have quite a list of questions as well. So hopefully we get through the majority of them. And just as a reminder, everyone, we will be sending out this recording and the slide deck to all who registered. And with that being said, I will dive into our first question. So the first question is, as a new leader, how do you first determine whether change is necessary? In the dishwashing example, does it matter how people wash the dishes as long as it gets done?
Definitely, sometimes it doesn't matter at all. And you should be okay with leaving those things alone. I have a model of who gets to make decisions in an organization that relies on programmatic knowledge versus organizational knowledge. And so if this is an organization specific decision that needs to be made, does change need to happen? The person who has the greatest visibility on that issue is going to make that decision. So for example, how to process a client application. I can have lots of feelings about that. I can have lots of thoughts and opinions about that, but I am not the expert. And so if the team is doing that and they are the experts and they have the information, I'm going to let them decide whether there needs to be a change or not. So, but I think there is some acknowledgement that when new leadership comes on board, there is very likely going to be some change, whether it's intentional or not. There's going to be a cultural shift. There's going to be a reappropriation of responsibilities and expectations. And so being prepared to navigate those things, I think, belongs to all new leaders.
Okay. Thank you for that. So the next question you hinted at just a little bit earlier, but this person wants to know, how do you take time off when there is no one else that can do your job and your job requires monitoring for everyday changes?
Yeah. So I think you really have to triage. And if there's truly no one else, I have a couple of different ways that when I need a break, I will take it with some flexibility. So for example, when I am going to be out and we are not in crisis mode at this point in time, so I have a little bit more flexibility, I pre-communicate that to my team 2 months in advance. I'm going to be out this week. And that way I can pre-address all the concerns, everything that might pop up during that time. So that helps a little bit. I also assign someone to be kind of my contact liaison during that time and say, these are the exact circumstances I want you to contact me. So if our monitoring results come in, if the police show up, if, these 6 things are good reasons to call me. These other 12 are not good reasons to call me, and please hold them. Because everyone's idea of what is urgent is going to be different. And so if you are the only person, you don't have someone to serve as your gatekeeper for you, I would ask that you consider really triaging what is critical during that time period that cannot wait. So not answering, so just putting a I will not be responding on your email blocks and your voicemail can take such a lift off of you. You can pause your email box. If you have a plugin, you could say, hey, I'm not available to respond. Then you can kind of be screening for those truly crisis moments, but you don't feel the burden of responding to everything that comes in. So I would say that's your in-between choice, but it is not easy at all.
Those are really great. And in between, like if you can't go all the way to one of there's an in between. Love it. The next question, and we'll probably only have time for maybe 2 more. So if you haven't already put your questions in the Q&A, now is your time. But the next question is, how do you stay true to your authentic self when work culture becomes overwhelming as you're someone in leadership? How do you do that?
Yeah. I was really underwater the first year, and I don't want to say that because I get to speak about it now that it was at all easy then. I probably cried every single day the first year, just realistically. And I was so excited to be there. This is my dream job. And I am so pleased with where we are as an agency now, but it was so incredibly difficult to do that. And the agency was not where I thought it would be when I came in. The transition didn't look like what I thought it would be. It was really jarring for me and for the agency for this change to happen. And so for me, I had to find that peer support, and it had to look different than it did before because I was moving in as a new executive director. I couldn't necessarily share all of my concerns with my staff or with my friends. And so I needed to find a different kind of peer that I could bounce ideas off in a really safe space. I'm a part of a couple associations that allow me to do that. I'm not joking about investing in the right therapist. I know it's expensive, but it is so absolutely necessary in public service leadership that you be kind of filling your own cup and taking care of your mental health. And just finding those people that you can be transparent with and say, yep, I actually didn't cry today, so it was a really good day. Like, is there someone you can call and say, it was a great day, I didn't cry? You know? So I think just finding someone you can be really transparent with is going to make the biggest difference to your leadership transition.
Thank you for sharing that. And Adrian, I know I said we might have time for one more, but I'm gonna have to bring us to a close. Thank you again just so much for everything that you've shared. Thank you for helping us to reframe and think through things differently. Thank you also for this amazing slide deck that we will be sending out later. So as just a wrap up, everyone, you can expect to get this recording and the slide deck within the week. So just keep an eye out on your email. And as a reminder, the Association of CMPs hosts events like this throughout the year. So for more info, please save and check out our upcoming events page. Really great opportunity for you to see what's coming down the pipeline as far as our webinars. If you are interested in learning more about our Elevate on Demand conference, we'll also drop that link in the chat if you wish to learn more. Excuse me. And then if you would like to help us continue to have these free events and webinars, you are welcome to donate to us to help support the cause, and we'll have more links in the chat for that as well. And then final 2 things, if you ever have any ideas about a future session, we'd love to hear it. So please let us know. You can send us an email with some ideas that you have. And lastly, just make sure that you all share your feedback with Adrian. She'd love to read it. So we hope that you'll fill out that brief survey. And thank you so much for spending a portion of your time with us today in the webinar. And we hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Bye.